Hello, my name is Dr. David Rawaf. Today I will be talking to you about the use of augmented reality simulators in laparoscopic surgical training. This is actually on the back end of a master's project that was led by Courtney Ludick, based at University Nottingham-Trent. And we have presented this alongside the Society of Surgical Simulation, as well as it being overarched and looked after by Innovus Medical, which is a surgical simulation company where we're hoping to become the world's partner for connected surgical training. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to the overview picture, which is that there are over 20,000 preventable deaths in the USA, 25% of hospitalizations due to medical errors, 10% of those in the UK are a result of adverse effects, and a lot of these are because of mistakes during surgery. There are lots of surgical errors occurring throughout the world in surgery. As a result of this, these can be deemed to be a result of inadequate training and education. So the project aim was actually to determine the suitability of AR or augmented reality for laparoscopic surgical training through a review of literature in the form of a systematic review. And really, it's a good time to really focus on why lap surgery in particular. We have severe and minor complications that can be avoided if we're trained properly. There is a massive learning curve. It's generally a see one, do one on the patient's bedside. As a result, it takes quite a long time, alongside the working restrictions we have, it takes quite a long time to train up to a proficient level, and even once we are there, it is difficult to maintain that level. We have a number of method of skills assessments currently in place, but these are inadequate, as you'll see. So there are lots of modalities in training. You have your classic animal or cadaver models. You've got simple box trainers, VR simulators, and AR simulators. And as you can see here, there's lots of benefits to the AR simulators. There's lots of tactile haptic feedback, and you compare that to VR simulators where there are no haptics, and you compare that to animal models where there's lots of cultural and anatomical and ethical issues. And there's also some simplicity or low fidelity aspects of box trainers that means it doesn't quite meet the expectations of the trainee. Anyway, here's our methodology. We managed to find 26 articles through an exclusion and inclusion criteria, and we found lots of results, and we're looking at the simulators in the market, validity of the simulators, the AR versus other modalities, AR versus other modalities, and user preference, as well as skill acquisition, and single or multimodal training for lap training. So we found a lot of different types of simulators. As you can see, the Innovus one that we create is on the right there, which is basically a hub and spoke model. We can take this home if you wanted to and train on the same device. And there are lots of other clunky, interesting looking box trainers, as you can see in the pictures there. But really, once we actually took a step back and looked at the fidelity as well as the types of validity, we can see that actually construct and concurrent validity on using objective measuring, using replication of the performance within within essentially an objective metrics to achieve a gold standard. That means we're looking at high fidelity trainers here. There are low fidelity trainers where we're looking at face validity or content validity, but these are very subjective. We also looked at skill acquisition. We can see there's an increased speed of learning, increased success rate, reduced operative time, improved ability to actually complete on non-technical as well as technical skills, and also we're seeing that some actual similarities between cadaveric and simulated groups as well. And we can actually see that the augmented reality simulators do mimic the same difficulties as what a cadaver would give you, and the overall operative time is reduced. So we're seeing here that actually there is a user preference. Between the four, augmented reality simulators are actually preferred, and we're actually seeing that trainees prefer multimodality training because it reduces boredom and it improves training outcomes. So sticking to one form of training is not as useful as utilizing all of them. So really, looking at the critical analysis of AR in laparoscopic surgical training, the difficulty is that we haven't assessed skill transferability. There's lots of procedures that it does not cover. There is also some good things coming out of that, which is that it's cheaper, that there's lots of reduction of surgical errors. There are good educational contents in there, lots of assessment of performance like objectivity and the metrics involved. and it's generally very easy to use. It's preferred as a result of that. And looking ahead, we need to look at other aspects of the study, which is when to incorporate these simulators, what stage of training, the mental workload associated with that. So I know at Innovus we're in the process of creating an EEG cap which can be worn, and we can monitor the brain waves of the trainee as they operate. And what we find is that the more junior you are, the more frontal you are. We can see through eye tracking that your eyes are darting all over the place. But the more senior you are, your eyes are very steady, looking at the lap screen, and you're more limbic, ironically enough. We're also looking at physical workload as well, so things like harnesses that allow you to measure joint position space means that we can assess what musculoskeletal disorders a surgeon might gain from operating in certain positions for a long period of time. And obviously looking at the skill transferability, what other simulators there are in the market, as well as other laparoscopic procedures from all sorts of specialties. There are lots of technical improvements that are in process and need to be done, so better replication of the clinical environment. So, for example, at Innovus, we actually use a human tissue likeness factor scale. Cost reduction, so making things cheaper, increases its affordability, increases its accessibility as a result, without sacrificing on functionality. So that's those are our core values at Innovus. And also, we actually want to look at quantitative scoring as well as standardization of these metrics. And thinking about actually aiming to have this user-centered. There are limitations to our study, so we have some omission of results due to poor search terms. We also have a bias towards a pro-MIS simulator because there's lots of publications on there. But in reality, the conclusions is that cadavers are still the gold standard, but augmented reality is preferred. And with further investigation and technological improvement, which we are working very hard at Innovus Medical, to make leaps and bounds in this, is that these simulators, augmented reality solutions, have the potential to become the new gold standard. And I think at that point it'd be good to include some slides on what the problem is, which is that, again, to summarize, the issue is that we are seeing one and doing one on the patient's bedside. We are practicing on the patient. And all the other VR simulators, even cadavers, are really expensive, and as a result they tend to be locked away in places we can't get to. And they are poor in functionality. VR simulators don't have haptics. Cadavers tend to be doused in so much formaldehyde that the tissues do not feel like normal tissues anymore. They're very friable, or sometimes very rubbery. And there's also no integration between simulated and live training. And actually I wanted to show you this slide because it gives you a lay of the land. And I know this is a biased slide because I work for Innovus, but Innovus sit right in the middle of what we call surgical training, which we believe is nothing like surgical training in reality. We shouldn't be going to practice and doing the real operation. We should be practicing like it's a sport. Say tennis, for example, where we practice our forehands, backhands and serves separately before we bring it all together as an entire game. And so that's what we're trying to do here, is actually provide the high and medium low fidelity training, live training, post-event training, as well as preclinical simulated training, and then dialing that all into one cloud-based piece of software which allows us to really track the surgeon's progress as they go through their careers. And here's a very nice video just displaying what an augmented reality simulator looks like. You can see here there are real instruments, so device agnostic, and there's a real human tissue likeness factor calculated piece of silicon blend appendix in there, which we're currently dissecting. And because of the computer vision, machine learning algorithms and sensors we have within the appendix, say if we cut in the wrong place at the wrong time, and or we're a little bit too rough with the tissues, we may end up with a complication, such as a bleed, as you can see here. And really what we're testing here is not only your ability to respond as a surgeon to a complication, but also we're testing what decisions you would make. So here we're simulating the blood, we're simulating the smoke, we're simulating the cognitive step of applying diathermy. I mean, supplying an energy device with all of these boxes would be prohibitively expensive. So we've gone for the cost-effective solution of applying this iris around the screen, so you can select tools like diathermy. And you can see the augmented reality overlays from the reflective cecum and the rest of the bowel. You can see the reflections from the peritoneum there. And just to reiterate, this is what it looks like within our simulator, which is what we believe to be the cutting edge of augmented reality surgical training. And on that Note, I'd like to thank you and invite you to any questions. Thanks.